Hey everyone, ready for a deep dive into something really fascinating?
Always.
Today, we're going to be exploring the three turnings of the Wheel of Dharma.
Oh, yeah, those are really interesting.
Yeah, and it's not about like literal wheels spinning or anything.
Right.
It's more about like a framework for understanding how Buddhist teaching sort of like evolved over time.
Yeah, like a spiritual roadmap, I guess you could say.
Exactly, a roadmap. And we've got excerpts from two sources to kind of guide us here.
Okay.
We've got overview of the three turnings
Mm-hmm.
by Kempo Vajra, and then also Three Turnings of the Wheel of Doctrine
Okay.
from Oxford Bibliographies.
Nice.
So using those two, we're going to try to kind of figure out what these three turnings are and why they're so important in Buddhist thought.
Sounds good.
So where should we begin? I guess we should start with the first turning of the wheel, right?
Yeah, that's the logical place to start.
And this is where we find the famous Four Noble Truths,
Absolutely.
which are kind of cornerstone of Buddhist thought.
Yeah, you could say that for sure. The Four Noble Truths are kind of the bedrock of the first turning of the wheel.
Okay, so remind me, what are those four truths again? I always get them mixed up.
Yeah, well, so the first noble truth is the truth of suffering. It's basically acknowledging that life as we experience it is just inherently filled with suffering, with impermanence, with lack of lasting fulfillment.
Right, and the second one explains why they're suffering. Right.
Exactly, yeah. The second noble truth gets into the cause of suffering. It's basically pointing to the fact that we get attached to things that are impermanent.
Oh, right.
We have this aversion to unpleasant things, and then there's this clinging, this fundamental clinging to a sense of self that doesn't really exist.
Okay, yeah, it's not just about like what's happening to you, it's your reaction to it too.
Exactly. It's much more about our internal reactions to circumstances rather than just the circumstances themselves.
Okay, and then what was the third noble truth?
The third noble truth is a more hopeful one, you could say. It's the truth that suffering can end.
Oh, okay.
Liberation is actually possible.
That's kind of wild when you think about it, that like we don't have to just be stuck in this
Yeah.
cycle of suffering.
Yeah, it's a very radical idea when you really think about it.
Totally. Okay, and then the fourth.
And then the fourth noble truth kind of completes that by providing the path to liberation,
Okay.
which is often referred to as the Eightfold Path.
Right, so it's not just about acknowledging suffering, it's like actually doing something about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fourth noble truth really gets into the practical side of how to move from suffering to liberation.
And this is where it starts to get really practical, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just abstract ideas. Like these truths are reflected in the actual practices of Buddhism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, for example, like contemplating death and impermanence
Right.
helps us to understand the first noble truth.
Mm-hmm.
Reflecting on karma, the law of cause and effect that highlights the second noble truth.
Okay.
And seeking out a teacher or a spiritual community that's part of engaging with the fourth noble truth, the path.
It's amazing how these preliminary practices are all grounded in these like core truths. It's not just philosophy, it's like a whole way of life.
Yeah, it really is. The first turning of the wheel is all about establishing this foundation, this recognition of suffering its origin, the possibility of liberation, and the path to achieve it.
Okay, so if the first turning is kind of like laying the foundation,
Hmm.
what does the second turning of the wheel add to this?
So the second turning kind of deepens and expands the teachings. It addresses those with the potential for what's called Mahayana Buddhism.
Okay, I've heard of Mahayana Buddhism, but I'm a little fuzzy on what exactly sets it apart.
Mm-hmm.
Can you break that down a little?
Certainly. So the second turning introduces the really crucial concept of emptiness.
Emptiness.
Emptiness,
That sounds kind of abstract and intimidating. What does that actually mean?
So emptiness in this context refers to the idea that all these phenomena we see around us, they actually lack any inherent self or identity.
Okay.
It's not that things don't exist.
Right.
It's that they exist, but they depend on causes and conditions.
So it's about like seeing things in relation to other things, how they're interconnected and constantly changing.
Exactly. And this understanding of emptiness leads to a pretty profound shift in perspective.
Like how so? What changes when we start to see things as like empty of inherent self?
Well, for one thing, it really challenges that ingrained sense of self and other,
Right.
our tendency to cling to a fixed identity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's from this understanding of emptiness that we see the blossoming of what are called the bodhisattva ideals.
Oh, now there's another term, bodhisattva. What exactly is a bodhisattva?
So in Mahayana Buddhism, a bodhisattva is basically someone who's motivated by great compassion
Okay.
and has made a vow to work for the benefit of all beings,
Not just themselves.
not just their own liberation, but all beings.
So the bodhisattva ideal is kind of like expanding your circle of concern way beyond yourself.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that interconnectedness of all things and acting for the benefit of the whole.
So the second turning builds on that foundation of the Four Noble Truths, but it goes deeper into this concept of emptiness and this ideal of the bodhisattva.
Yeah, and that brings us to the third turning, which is perhaps the most subtle and challenging of the three.
Okay, really bring on the mind-bending stuff. What new insights does the third turning offer?
Well, the third turning, which some schools categorize as the Siddha Mantra teachings, focuses on refining our understanding of the nature of mind and reality.
Even beyond emptiness.
Even beyond the concept of emptiness. Yeah.
Okay.
So the third turning introduces the idea that all phenomena, even emptiness itself, are ultimately just mental constructs.
Whoa. So it's not just that things don't have inherent existence, but like our perception of reality
Yeah,
is also a product of our own minds.
precisely. It's a very nuanced and complex teaching one that challenges even the most subtle mental extremes.
Okay. I'm definitely going to need some help unpacking this one.
Yeah, for sure.
But before we dive into the third turning, I think we need to take a breath. Let all this sink in for a moment.
Yeah, that sounds good.
We'll be back in a moment to explore that third turning and how it kind of fits into this map of Buddhist thought, so don't go anywhere.
See you in a bit.
Okay, so we're back and ready to kind of like grapple with this third turning of the Wheel of Dharma.
All right, let's do it.
And you were saying this is where things get really mind-bendy.
It does, yeah. The third turning, sometimes called Siddha Mantra, really pushes us to look at how we perceive reality, like the very nature of it.
Okay, so it's not just about what's like out there in the world.
Right.
It's how our minds make sense of it.
Exactly. Yeah, the third turning is all about recognizing that everything we perceive it all comes from the mind.
Okay, I can already see how that could get confusing.
Mm-hmm.
So how is that different from the idea of emptiness that we talked about in the second turning?
So with the second turning, emptiness was pointing to the fact that, like, things don't have this inherent existence, right? The third turning kind of takes that further and says, well, even emptiness, even that is a mental construct.
So even our understanding of emptiness is like filtered through our own way of seeing things.
Exactly. It's a pretty radical shift in perspective, and it can be tough to grasp.
Yeah.
But it opens up all these possibilities for understanding what reality really is.
Okay, well, one of the key ideas in the third turning is this thing about dividing phenomena into three categories.
Right.
Imputed, dependent, and truly established.
Yes.
Can you unpack those a little for me?
Sure. So imputed phenomena are basically those things that only exist as concepts or labels in our minds. They don't have like a real inherent reality outside of our thoughts.
So like the concept of a tree, that's an imputed phenomenon.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a label that we use, but it doesn't tell us like the real essence of what a tree is.
Gotcha. The tree exists whether or not we have a word for it.
Right. Exactly. Then you have what are called dependent phenomena.
Okay.
Which are basically things that come about because of causes and conditions.
Like the actual physical tree growing, changing with the seasons, that's all dependent phenomena.
Precisely, yeah, because it's a result of all these factors like sunlight, water, nutrients, all that.
Right, okay. And then what was that last one?
And the last category is the truly established.
Truly established.
Which refers to this absolute truth, the unconditioned ground of being.
Okay, now that one sounds really abstract. What is that unconditioned ground of being?
Think of it kind of like the underlying reality that all these phenomena, all these things emerge from. It's often described as like pure awareness, just the ground of consciousness itself.
So even though like everything we see is changing all the time,
yeah,
there's this like unchanging reality beneath it all.
You could say that, yeah, the third turning is pointing us towards that ultimate truth, that unconditioned ground of being as the source of everything.
Wow, it's like we keep peeling back these layers with each turning, and it just gets deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, this third turning is really hard to wrap my head around.
It is. It's some of the most like profound and subtle teachings in all of Buddhism.
But you don't need to like fully grasp it intellectually to get something out of it.
So how can we as like listeners engage with these teachings in a way that's meaningful for us?
I think the key is to contemplate these ideas, to reflect on them, and see how they resonate with your own experience.
So it's not about like memorizing definitions or forcing ourselves to understand something that maybe we're not ready for. It's more about letting these teachings kind of spark our own insights, and maybe our understanding will deepen over time. Exactly. Now, before we go on, there's another important piece to all of this that we need to touch on, and that's secret mantrayana.
Ah, yes. Secret Mantrayana.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about this one because it seems so different
Yeah.
from everything else we've talked about.
It does. It takes a different approach.
Hmm.
Secret Mantrayana or Vajrayana Buddhism
Hmm.
is a distinct tradition, but it offers these really unique ways to try to reach enlightenment.
So while the three turnings are like this framework for how Buddhist thought evolved,
Mhm.
Secret Mantrayana is like its own separate path.
Yeah, you could say that. It's definitely compatible with the basic ideas of Buddhism,
Okay.
but it really emphasizes direct experience and transformation through like specific practices and rituals.
That's what I find so interesting about it.
Hmm.
It's not just about understanding it in your head.
Yeah.
It's about like your whole being involved.
Exactly. Secret Mantrayana says that we all have this Buddha nature inside us,
Okay?
and it gives us tools to awaken that potential.
So it's saying that we're already enlightened like in our true nature.
Mm-hmm.
But if that's true, then why are we all suffering?
That's a great question. So Secret Mantrayana deals with this by saying that there are two ways to see reality.
Okay.
The first is the absolute truth, sometimes called the Buddhahood of the spontaneously perfect ground.
Okay.
And this is the idea that our real nature, our essence, is already pure and awakened.
Like a jewel hidden in mud.
I love that analogy. Yeah, exactly. Like the mud is like our delusions, all the stuff that's blocking us.
Oh.
But the jewel, that pure nature, is always there underneath.
Okay, so we're just focused on the dirt and not the jewel.
Exactly.
Right.
And then the second way of seeing reality is the relative truth,
Okay.
which is basically how things seem to us
Right.
in our normal, everyday state of mind.
Right. So we see the mud and think that's all there is.
Yeah, and Secret Mantrayana gives us practices to help us see through those delusions,
Okay.
to purify those obscurations and let that jewel, our Buddha nature, shine through.
That makes sense. But how do we actually purify these obscurations?
Right. Well, this is where Secret Mantrayana gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to avoid or push away negative thoughts and emotions, it teaches us to take afflictions as the path.
Wait, what? Taking afflictions as the path? That sounds kind of backwards.
Yeah, it might seem counterintuitive at first, but it's a really profound approach.
So instead of trying to get rid of like anger or jealousy,
Right.
we're supposed to use them to help us grow.
In a way, yes. Secret Mantrayana teaches us to face those afflictions head on, to really see them clearly and use them as opportunities to awaken wisdom and compassion.
Can you give me an example of how that would actually work?
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time imagining how something like anger could lead to enlightenment.
Sure. Imagine you're feeling really angry.
Okay.
Instead of pushing that anger down or lashing out, try to just observe it.
Just like sit with it and feel it.
Exactly. Notice the physical sensations, the thoughts that come up, the energy of it all.
Okay.
And just by observing it without judgment,
Yeah.
you start to see that it's not permanent.
So you're like creating some space between you and the anger.
Exactly. And as you look closer, you might start to notice the thoughts and beliefs that are feeding the anger.
Like maybe I'm angry because someone hurt my pride,
Yeah.
or I feel like I've been treated unfairly.
Exactly. And by bringing those underlying thoughts and beliefs into the light,
Mm-hmm.
you can start to question them to see if they're really true or if they're even helpful.
So it's not about pretending the anger isn't there. It's about using it to understand yourself better.
Exactly. And as you understand the nature of anger better,
Yeah.
you can start to transform it into wisdom and compassion.
That's pretty incredible. So we're basically using our challenges to help us grow spiritually.
Exactly. That's one of the main ideas in Secret Mantrayana.
Hmm.
By working with our afflictions in a skillful way,
Okay.
we can actually turn them into sources of wisdom and liberation.
This is starting to make a lot more sense. So the three turnings are like the map of Buddhist thought.
Mm-hmm.
And then Secret Mantrayana gives us specific techniques to kind of like speed up our journey.
That's a great way to put it. And there's one more thing about Secret Mantrayana that's worth mentioning, which is the idea of skillful means.
Skillful means, what does that mean?
It basically means being able to adapt your actions and teachings
Mm-hmm.
to meet the needs of whoever you're interacting with.
So being flexible and creative in how you help others.
Exactly. Secret Mantrayana recognizes that there's no one right way.
To reach enlightenment.
Yeah, everyone's different.
What works for one person might not work for another.
So it's all about meeting people where they are
Yeah.
and giving them teachings that really resonate with them.
Exactly.
Mm.
And that's what makes Secret Mantrayana so dynamic and adaptable. It's not about rigid rules.
Mm-hmm.
It's about using wisdom and compassion to find the best way to help yourself and everyone around you.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here, from the Four Noble Truths to the third turning,
Mm-hmm.
and now this whole fascinating world of secret mantrana.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey.
It really has. What stands out to you from all this?
What I find so interesting is how each of the turnings kind of builds on the one before it.
Yeah.
It offers a more and more refined understanding of reality
Right.
and how to become liberated.
Yeah.
And it's not about one being right and the other's wrong.
Right,
It's more like different perspectives that make sense at different stages of your journey.
That's a great point. It's not like climbing a ladder where you just leave the lower rungs behind.
It's more like a spiral
Yeah.
where you keep coming back to the same themes, but understanding them more deeply each time.
Exactly. And then when we add in secret mantrana, it's like a whole other dimension that emphasizes direct experience and
Right.
transformation.
I think for me, the idea of taking afflictions as the path,
Hmm.
that really struck me. It seems so counterintuitive, but it's
Mhm.
also super powerful.
Yeah.
Like, instead of seeing our challenges as these obstacles in our way,
Yeah.
we can use them to help us grow.
It really is a totally different way of seeing things. And I
Yeah.
think it's relevant even outside of Buddhism.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
We all deal with difficult stuff in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to see those challenges as opportunities to learn and grow,
Yeah.
that's so valuable. It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right.
But instead of just surviving,
Yeah.
we're actually using those hardships to cultivate wisdom and compassion.
And remember the idea of skillful means. That applies here too.
Oh, right.
There's no one right way to work with our afflictions.
Okay.
It's all about finding what works for you,
No.
what helps you to see your challenges clearly and respond to them in a skillful way.
So if someone's listening and they're like, this is interesting, but it seems kind of scary, where should they start?
I'd say start simple. Start with mindfulness.
Okay.
Next time you're feeling stressed or anxious or just down, try to pause and just observe those feelings without judgment.
Okay.
Notice the sensations in your body, the thoughts going through your mind. Just
Mhm.
by creating that space for awareness,
Yeah,
you're starting to change how you relate to those difficult emotions.
that's a great place to start. And you don't have to be a Buddhist or a meditation expert to benefit from these ideas.
Not at all. These teachings offer tools for anyone who wants to live a more meaningful and fulfilling life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
These teachings remind us that the path to liberation isn't about running away from the world
Right.
or trying to be someone you're not.
Yeah.
It's about being present in this moment, facing our challenges with courage and compassion, and always trying to understand ourselves and the world around us better.
It's a journey of self-discovery.
Yeah.
A process of constantly unfolding.
And it's a journey that we can all take no matter who we are or what we believe.
So as you keep exploring these ideas, pay attention to what speaks to you.
Yeah.
What makes you curious? What challenges your assumptions? What insights can you actually use in your own life?
Because in the end, the teachings that have the most impact are the ones we discover for ourselves, the ones that change us from the inside out.
Exactly.
Keep diving deep and see where this journey leads you.
Oh,
Until next time, keep exploring.
yeah, it really has.
Yeah.
What stands out to you from all this?
I think what's so fascinating to me is how each of the turnings kind of builds on the last one, you know?
Yeah.
It offers a more and more like refined understanding of what reality is and how we can become liberated.
Right.
And it's not about like one being right and the other's wrong.
Yeah. It's more about different perspectives that speak to us at different points in our journey.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like we're climbing a ladder and just ditching the lower rungs.
Exactly.
It's more like a spiral
Yeah, like a spiral.
where we keep revisiting the same ideas, but each time we go a little deeper.
I like that, a spiral. Yeah. And then adding in secret mantrana that adds a whole other dimension to it with its focus on direct experience and transformation.
Yeah, I think for me, the idea of taking afflictions as the path, that really stood out.
Yeah, me too. It's so counterintuitive,
Mhm.
but also so powerful. You know, instead of just seeing our challenges and difficult emotions as these roadblocks,
Yeah.
we can use them to help us grow. It really is a completely different way of looking at things.
And I think that's relevant even outside of a specifically Buddhist context.
Oh, for sure.
We all face hardships, you know?
Absolutely.
And to be able to see those as chances to learn and become better,
Yeah.
that's incredibly valuable. It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But here, it's not just about enduring. It's about actively working with it
Right.
to gain wisdom and compassion.
And remember how we were talking about skillful means?
Uh-huh.
That's important here, too. There's no one right way to work with those difficult emotions.
Right.
It's about finding what works for you,
Hmm.
what helps you to see your challenges clearly and respond skillfully.
So if someone's listening and they're thinking, okay, this sounds interesting, but also kind of scary, where's a good place to start?
I would say start simple.
Yeah.
Start with mindfulness.
Okay.
Like next time you're stressed or anxious or down,
Mm-hmm.
just pause for a second and try to observe those feelings without judging them.
Yeah.
Notice what's happening in your body, what thoughts are coming up.
Right.
And just by making that space for awareness,
Yeah.
you're already starting to shift your relationship to those tough emotions.
That's a great starting point. And you don't have to be a Buddhist or a meditation master to benefit from these ideas.
Not at all. Anyone who wants to live a more meaningful and fulfilling life can find something helpful here.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And it reminds us that the path to liberation, it's not about escaping from the world or trying to be someone you're not.
Yeah, it's about being right here, right now,
Yeah.
facing our difficulties with courage and compassion,
Yeah.
and always striving to understand ourselves and the world better.
It's a journey of self-discovery.
It really is a constant process of unfolding.
And anyone can embark on this journey,
Absolutely.
no matter their background or beliefs.
So as you keep exploring all this,
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to what really resonates with you,
Yeah.
what sparks your curiosity, what challenges you,
Yeah.
and what insights can you actually use in your own life.
Because ultimately, the teachings that really change us are the ones we've in for ourselves.
Exactly. The
Yeah.
ones that transform us from the inside out.
So keep diving deep, everyone, and see where this journey takes you. Until next time, keep exploring.